Tom, can you hear me?
I can now,
All
yeah.
right, there it goes. I think I muted myself. Cool. How are you? What's up?
uh, I'm alright. So are you streaming right now, or
Yeah,
are
I'm
you going?
streaming. I don't think we have viewers yet. I just kind of messing around building bases in Rust.
Yeah. How am I? Well,
Yeah, that's
I
a good
mean,
question to start with. Like, how's it going, man? How are you holding up?
I mean, it's been similar for a better part of 10 months, going on 11.
Yeah, same old.
Yeah,
What does
I
that
mean,
consist of for you? Are you working from home?
yeah, I mean, I do some paperwork for my parents, family, and all that, but I've also been playing games and doing all that fun stuff.
A lot of games.
Not as much.
Any
Yeah,
games you can suggest?
I mean, I just went through The Last of Us 2, which is like oh my god, that game is an experience. It'll make you feel something one way or the other. It's not all gonna be happy and positive though. That's for damn sure.
I haven't played
Uh,
either of them yet,
yeah,
so I'm not sure what you're referring to.
yeah. The Last of Us 1 is like that game is great. It's like 10 out of 10. Very very good video game. I would say Last of Us 2. It's a lot more controversial than the first game, that's for sure.
That's pretty much
For
all
a
I
bunch
heard.
of reasons. Yeah. Um, some people are into that stuff, but yeah, it's definitely some interesting decisions that they made creating that game. Other than that, I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil games. I've been enjoying those. You know, went through a bunch of the series this year because I don't before the pandemic, I'd only played 4 and 5, but I got around to all the rest of them, plus Revelations 2 and 1. So I've definitely been playing a lot of that and enjoying it. Even though some of those games aren't like great, but they're pretty all right
So
overall.
mainly one-player games, though. It sounds like no other fighting games.
Yeah. For right now, I mean, at least for Melee, like I don't know, when you play it for like a long time and you know when you play for a long time and things are get more and more difficult, it's harder to to keep wanting to do that,
In other
week
games.
after week, month after month, because it's a if you're trying to get better at playing games, it's very much a lifestyle that you have to live, lifestyle, a hobby, whatever you want to call it, but at some point it loses a little bit of its luster, I think.
It loses the
Definitely.
luster. You're no longer content on like going pro with your life. You want to do other things.
Well, not necessarily going pro, but just like pushing myself, because I came to a conclusion, a while ago, that it's not really about how well you're doing, winning tournaments, all that stuff. It's more about just like seeing how good you can be, right?
Of course. I mean, that's why I'll always play games like chess casually or fighting games casually, or even other platform fighters, whatever you want to call them. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, I don't. I have more fun getting good and learning things on my own. I don't think it's about tournament performance for me. Not that it ever was. The TOs
Yeah,
have a different motivation.
yeah. A lot of people, for them, it is about that, though, right?
Of course, you have to respect that in any field. There'll be people trying to be the best, whatever it takes.
Yeah, definitely. I think over the last, I want to say, 2.5 years or whatever, since I slowed down and started playing the game a lot less, I was able to take a step back, and it gave me perspective on fighting games, and what it means to be good at it, what it means to have a good mentality, and all this stuff. And it's very much a thing where it's how should I describe it? It's a thing where you have to master yourself, right?
Yeah,
And
it's an
how you do things.
exercise. I mean, we can go through all the memes of inner game of tennis, motivational books. Like, it's all about how you apply the same lessons to whatever aspect of your life.
Yeah. And speaking of all this stuff, player motivation, we have had the pandemic is set in, and it's been difficult for sure for a lot of people. I think the president recently said that he expects over 600,000 people will be dead from this pandemic in the United States before this is all over. So it's some pretty rough stuff for sure. But in terms of like the effect that it has on the community, obviously we can't run tournaments in person anymore, which is very bad. And there's a lot of people that don't love online tournaments. They want their in-person tournaments back. And all that.
Yeah, we could talk about that then, because so you clearly you're not as motivated by playing the games anymore, but do you still have motivation to run tournaments?
Yeah, it's a thing where like I looked at it as something that I was good at, and a way to do like some good in the world and for the community, right? This community that's given me so much.
You still think that though? That hasn't changed. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
That hasn't changed. Like, like I've acknowledged that I'm not going to be doing this forever necessarily, but for the foreseeable future, I'm going to still be running these tournaments because, I am acknowledged to be like one of the best at it. I'd like to think I'm okay at it, and people, and people still want them. So, as long as that's the case, I don't really see a reason for me to not be doing that. It's still something that I'm passionate about, because this is like we're talking about like the advancement of the community's collective interests, right? It's not just like my own or anything. And I don't know, being a part of something greater, I think is very cool.
So to that end, have you shifted online, or is that just not interesting to you at all? You're just going to wait it out?
I've pretty much handed off the baton to other people to run online tournaments and stuff. It's not something where we have like a shortage of online tournaments that that people are having a hard time finding, right? That's not.
Yeah, that's a bit true.
It's not an area of concern, right? Obviously when offline tournaments come back, they'll definitely want me to be doing those, and I'll be happy to provide them. Sure, but
you think there's going to be a big flood of people, just like a ton of events are queued up, ready to go? I mean, I still don't see a time frame for when that's going to happen. I think that's the hard part. That's why I've held off.
Yeah, so I mean, anybody that's planning a major like this year, 2021, like if you're doing anything before like fall or so, like I wouldn't count on it. The pandemic is still a significant problem, and it's gonna be a problem for a while for event organizers. Which I mean, obviously that sucks, but we don't get to plan events, just like absent of any realities. Like it's not how you operate.
Yeah. I'm not putting any time and effort into that at all until we make that more certain. Oops.
Yeah. So how I feel about it is that like we rescheduled CT GamerCon, which is like a big Connecticut regional that I've been at the helm for a couple years. That one is set for, I think we put at like September 18th or so, something like that. We have hopes that we can do it, but it's going to take things getting a lot better. A lot better than they are right now, that's for sure.
And even if it gets better, do you really want to be the first ones to host that event? Like, in my mind, there's a risk factor, there's liability, it's just like conscience too. I'm not sure at what point I'll feel comfortable again to do something.
Yeah.
I don't know what scale you're thinking, but even the people who do huge majors, I know for other conventions, they're still not planning till 2022, just because the scale of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're doing something that's like regionally based, that's one thing, right? If you're doing something that's like Genesis, that's a bigger undertaking. And
or like E3 or any real convention. I think even at the start of it, though, they were projecting 2+ years. So I wonder if that changed now based on how bad it's been, or if the new strains of virus is going to change that. But there's too many uncertainties for me to invest effort in it right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking, I think if you're talking like local tournaments, regionals, that's one thing. But like majors are definitely a step up. I don't run majors. Well, I mean, that's technically not accurate. I run a P plus major, but
Which one?
blacklisted.
Oh, that's
It's
right.
the only,
Blacklist. Yeah.
yeah, it's the only one on the East Coast that's still standing after all this time, which is unfortunate. But what can you do? You know. Just
Yeah.
gotta work off of what the people want and what the demand is at the time. If there was more demand, there would be more tournaments, right? And it goes without saying.
Yeah. So in terms of my tournaments, the only one we're doing is quarantines, which we've kind of decentralized. We have a different model for that, and we've definitely focused on niche games. We tried to give P plus a little space to play there, but
Yeah,
yeah, the motive, like, it's very different because it's a charity event. If there was any discussion over legitimacy of rankings of like large amounts of prize money, I would not want to be involved in that. I don't think most of these games are
oh
ready for
no,
that at all.
no, 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 no. And I think just in general, online tournaments they're good to have, but it's not a thing where I'd be sitting here like, oh yeah, I definitely think that we should be having PRs based off of these. I don't think that that's exactly proper. I know some places have done it. I know New Jersey has done it,
Well,
but
no, no. Okay, to
yeah,
be explicitly clear, we made clear that it's not a real PR. Like, it's a net play PR. We have to add a conditional.
yeah,
Like, we can't just
yeah,
stop
yeah,
living, and we have to have something move on.
yeah. I mean, New England has just been like a lot less active, like overall,
How many
when it
net play
comes to
events do you
online
have?
tournaments. Well, I mean, we had earlier on in past time, we had Stock was doing something with DigiHog, and we had a online Arcadian in October, and we had a Mono, which was Alston Melee's big thing. They were like we had people organizing stuff and all that, but it's just a thing where like New England in general, we aren't really like super duper active in terms of these online tournaments. Uh, I don't know if I don't know if it's just a thing where like they don't have the same allure that the in-person tournaments did, but
They
I
definitely
think
don't.
either yeah, I mean either way it's just a thing where like I'm planning on things being decently okay attendance-wise when tournaments come back in person, but it's going to take some time for sure. I mean, if I'm sitting here and I'm hoping for things to come back in 8 months, then I think that tells you all you need to know about like the state of things and where they are, right?
Yeah, do you think interest has actually gone up now because we have Slippy and we have all these people sitting online waiting? I don't know if
Well,
it's probably less of a rate of new players as before, but there must still be new players getting into the game.
all right, so like I've had my own theories about like what's gonna happen, and like this is like the big unknown for a lot of event organizers is where the scale of these events gonna look like. I think for Melee specifically, a lot of people were hoping that Metagame, the documentary that released last month, a lot of people were hoping that that would have like a really big impact. That would bring a lot of new people in and stuff. And like it definitely will have like some effect overall on these tournaments that are going to come back, but it's not going to be anywhere near as big as the original documentary was. That's for sure. Pretty confident in saying that.
Yeah, it doesn't compare. It wasn't, not just the content of it, but the time and place and just culture around it. I think it was a different. It was a different cultural shift back then when it came out of nowhere, and now you're kind of expecting it. Also, I think the reception to it was very unfair. I feel kind of bad for him, but that's like I
Well,
don't even want to get into that whole thing because there's so many
yeah,
nuances to it.
yeah. I think my own personal take on it is that if Sandbox had released that thing like a year earlier or so, it would have been far better
Yeah, the
received.
timing was not on his side.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
then, though,
It,
like,
it's
what did
just
people expect him to do, though? I don't. It's hard to say because I don't know what his budget was. I don't know what the time constraints were, when the final cut was. But you have to expect that these people are going to be in the background of videos. Like, you can't erase their history forever.
yeah.
In some
It's
of the
just a
case.
thing. Yeah, it's just to me, it's just a thing where he was put in an objectively terrible position
Yeah.
once summer rolled around, because obviously we have all of these revelations about various people that were in the community. But I think I don't know, if I were in that position, would I be willing to like spend hours and hours of work, days of work even, to overhaul the whole thing just so that Redacted has no part in commentating like every single set that's relevant? I don't know.
Also, does he feel the need to? Like, he may have cut some of it and
Yeah.
thought that what he left in was enough and that the community was mature enough to handle it, and maybe we weren't. I don't know. And I think there were some things where people united, like, that was in bad taste, but it's not awful. And there were some things where people really debated. I think, at least afterward, people came out and kind of said, yeah, this shouldn't have been the focus. I'm sorry, Samox. Like, you did your
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, it's like I said, if it was released a year earlier, he would have had far fewer problems. I mean, it still wasn't perfect. Like, it very much was a PPMD,
Yeah, the
Armada-focused
storyline.
documentary at the expense of the others. Like, it's very clear that that's what it was.
It felt like an older storyline. I think people expected addition to the story, but instead of kind of redid and added a tiny bit. But it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to
I
talk
mean,
about history when it's still happening.
yeah. I mean, Apex 2015, like, I remember being there and,
Me
like,
too.
yeah, and
It's a weird note to end off on.
Yeah, I think about the fact that that tournament happened at all, given the circumstances. I think I mean, you could argue it's one of the most important tournaments in the history of Smash overall. It was the first. What was it? It was the first big Smash Four major, I think, or one of the first big Smash Four majors. Obviously, for Melee, we know the significance that had,
Yeah.
and like having 1,000 people at a tournament for Melee was like a relatively new thing back then. It wasn't like it wasn't something that was just expected, that like it would be in the years that came after. But
Yeah, it was a whole culture around it too, because a lot of people were getting into it. Like, I probably got into it right before the doc came out, and then I could see this influx of people just show up out of nowhere, and like,
yes,
it was it's hard to explain. Also, the New Jersey perspective is very different from what Outsiders had. I think it was also pretty funny.
yeah, yeah. It's fine for me to be like, man, if they had Apex in a future year, like, would I automatically dismiss going to it? No. Which is
Well,
funny
we've
because
had them
of how
since then.
yeah. It's funny to think like, oh, this event ran terribly. Why would anybody want to go to it? But it was just like, I think 2015 was just, even with all the difficulties, even with all the shit that went wrong, there's a lot of people that would look at that and still say that they don't regret going at all.
Oh, yeah, 2015 was one of those things where it wasn't even that bad. Like, it was all behind the scenes that it was bad. If you were an attendee going there, actually, that's not true. I forget I lived there. If you were out of
day one,
yeah, if you were out
right?
of state, you were kind of messed up that whole time. You got to transfer hotels. Yeah. Well, it could have turned out worse. That's all I'll say, having known what was going on in the back end. And there's also the whole Alex Strife issue and all that. So there was a lot of reasons for the tournament to end after that, not just the logistic issues. Oh, Tom, you there? Tom, you there? Hello?
Yeah, I
There
got
you
for a second. I'm back.
Oh, hey. No, yeah, you were at Apex 2015. I think I met you there. I met you at Shine too. There a few times. Do you have any memories from Apex 2015 you want to talk about?
I mean, like, the first day I was in there and like, I knew what was going on, like, with, this big meeting of, like, the organizers who were trying to save this fucking thing, right? There was definitely a lot among them. I can't imagine the amount of anxiety that must have gone in there. At the time, I wasn't like a big event organizer as much. I was a little bit more of a player back then. I do remember, day one, you know, like my car, we were lucky to, have steps in our hotel room, and we just had random people come in from wherever, and and they got to play us and all that stuff, and that was a good time. I definitely had fun with that, and then and obviously the fact that we had the tournament on days 2 and 3, and, like they condensed a 3-day event into a 2-day event.
Yeah, the
Got all
scheduling alone was pretty impressive, I gotta say.
Yeah, a 3-day event to a 2-day event, and then they moved all the logistics of the tournament from what was it, it was the Empire Mellons Hotel at the time or whatever, to the Garden State Convention Center. I think was the new place that they went to.
I forget the names, but I clearly picture them both in my head. I drive past
Yeah,
them, they're in New Brunswick, yeah.
yeah, and I gotta say, like being at the tournament, for day 2, the salty sweet and all that stuff. Like, and then seeing it on the documentary as like, as a thing that was a part of history and all that stuff. It really brought home to me, like, man, this is stuff that I got to experience, and now I'm like reliving it, in some regards. So that was pretty cool. Day 3, me and my car left a little bit early because of snow that was coming into the area.
So, well, we did have Apex after that, but they never really hit the same level of notoriety. It's a question if they'll ever recover from that, I think. But
Yeah, I mean,
at this point, it's the same for every tournament. I know there's a lot that are considering going under, or they're shifting, pivoting how they're working. Like, are you worried about
yeah.
your series?
I mean, here's the thing. Like, the way I have it personally, I do so. Pretty much all my tournaments are with Game Underground, which they've been doing Smash tournaments for forever. Since like well before I was even in the scene. You know, with Matt.Zeb and Pastime, and I think it was like Red Sox fan or whatever that was the guy before him or what have you.
Red Sox
Yeah,
guy? I don't even know this name.
Red Sox fan.
Red Sox
Yeah,
fan.
yeah, he
Wow.
was. Yeah, I think he was the guy that was an event organizer like way, way in the past, like prehistoric New England Melee, I guess. But I think, I think understanding that you have a game store that's like committed to what you're doing, and they want to throw big tournaments and stuff and all that. It's been really, really helpful.
Is the
For
store
sure.
doing okay still, or are they in trouble?
Oh, they're gonna be fine, or at least that's the indication that I have. Like they're not doing great right now. Nobody is, but
Yeah.
they're going to be able to, see the other side of this and have tournaments and all that. CT GamerCon is like that's like one of their big events, that they do with the head of GamerCon, which is Mitch Halleck, uh, and all that. So like working with them has been really nice, and they've been allowing us to host weeklies and monthlies for both Melee and P plus, and all that stuff. And at our weeklies, we have both games there, but for monthlies, I can only really have one there because Melee is just too big. You know,
When's the last time
like
you ran a physical Melee event? Was it March?
March 12th,
Wow.
2020.
That was like
Mhm.
right before, yeah.
Yeah, that was the last weekly in front of the pandemic. How many people showed up at that one? We had 18 players show up at that tournament, and I pretty much told everybody, like, look, this is the last one that I'm gonna do. If you want to show up, great, but I'm not going to I'm going to put this here as a farewell, but I'm not going to like actively, you know,
You were
say
done,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Do
no,
what you want, but
it's
I'm not in this.
well, I was there. I ran the event, but I ran it with the understanding that like I wasn't going to I wasn't gonna be aggressive about encouraging people to go. It's more just a thing where it's like it's my last one. It's there if you want it, pretty much. Um, GamerCon's original dates were 9 days after that,
And then it
which
changed.
or I think it was 9 days after that, something like that. Yeah, it's because the crazy thing was is that I was probably looking at, I was probably looking at having at least like maybe like 7, 8 top 100 players, and probably at least 100 players overall that were gonna be there. Like everything was setting up perfectly for that event to succeed, and then bang, COVID was like, no, you're not going to have your tournament.
It
And,
hurts.
yeah, it's just like I think what sucks is when you put in like it's like a similar thing for players. You put a lot of effort into something and you don't get out of it, what you want. It definitely doesn't feel good. You know.
Our last in-person quarterly report, I think it was like the 7th. I think it was the 7th. And yeah, right after that, I was like, I'm not even going to start thinking about the next one. And I haven't really. We did the online one pretty much the end of that month just because we thought we could do it in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like it was yesterday too. Time has just flown this last year.
Yeah. I mean, there's been so much that's happened since then, right? I mean, we had the horrible things that were coming out over the summer. Um, New England Melee came out of that mm, pretty like I mean it affected a lot of people, right? Like this was something that was a huge event for like the collective community. But in terms of like guilty parties coming out of my region for Melee specifically, you weren't really seeing that.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm pretty proud that New Jersey had, I don't think anyone. I mean, I can think of one or two people behind the scenes that have done questionable stuff that people have like called them out on, but it wasn't like an open ordeal and it wasn't on a scale anywhere near as bad as other stuff.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna say that like the code of conduct, like what they had to put up with, dealing with all these cases or a lot of these cases privately and then shit going public, like, you know, I think I think it's really hard for people to. I think one of the worst parts of being an event organizer is when you have to make decisions about like player discipline and stuff like that.
Yeah,
When
it's not easy, especially when you are not, you're just like a friend or you're just a community member. You have no authority over this person or their life. You don't know who they are. It's a lot to
it's more,
expect.
it's more just like the hardest part, at least to me, is like, you know, if when you have the whole picture, like all the stuff, about the background of people involved and stuff and things like this. And you have to make decisions that are extremely public while the public does not know everything that you do. So, like, you see where this can be an issue, right?
Of course,
You know,
transparency was the biggest complaint about the Smash COC. I know the Smash COC is now trying to work with the new FGC COC, and the transparency is a big thing that they're about, and they're trying to make it better. So hopefully that helps a bit. But I don't envy the position that Smash COC was in. I don't think I would have taken that up, or I don't know.
yeah,
I really don't even know how I could criticize it, like how I would have gone about it differently. So I won't even.
yeah,
I can't judge them.
yeah. The thing is that like they had the Captain Zack case, right? And
Oh, that
people
that in
were,
itself is like you need a whole fucking organization just to deal with that issue. Like nobody
yeah,
is ready for that.
that was a nightmare. That was like the perfect example of why I was saying. So they make an extremely public decision. There's huge blowback over that decision because the public doesn't know everything that they do, and then the revelations come out, and it's like,
And even the
man,
revelations, it goes back and forth so many times publicly in the narrative over like 6 months to a year even. And then the
yep,
stuff over the summer, I don't even to this day, I just it's so toxic I can't even touch that discussion, you know?
yeah. I mean, I don't intend to. Here's the thing. I didn't sign up to run events to be like a judge or a nanny or shit like that. That isn't why I'm running the tournaments. I'm running the tournaments because I am trying to advance the interest of the community and all that, right? And I want to give people the best events I can, and and I obviously want to do right by them. That's what all this is for.
I think
And
that's a good point, though. Like, do you feel like you were thrust into a leadership position or a moderator position just because that's the space you occupy as a TO? It just gravitates toward that, and people look to
well,
you.
yeah. Well, here's the thing. So, all right. So like I said, I wasn't always an event organizer, like in terms of being the guy for New England Melee and all that stuff. I was like that wasn't how it was for me back in my first maybe 3 years or so, like 2 3 years in the scene. I started in November 2013, and I was a player, and I ran like a small tournament that was in New Hampshire at the time. Like that was what I was doing, and it, and like the people that were running the tournaments in Massachusetts, like Matt.Zev was still at the there at the time. Big Blue Esports was running tournaments pretty consistently, and like they were getting crazy numbers for their tournaments, like over the course of 20 months, from April 2015 to the end of 2016, they were averaging 100 entrants or so, or no, it wasn't 100. It was I think it might have been, actually it was 80, just shy of 80. They were averaging 80 entrants at Boston Weekly for close to 20 months, which is absurd. They did break 100 multiple times. I do remember that. And they were definitely like the big show in town, right? They were running invitationals. They were doing all this stuff. But what happened over the course of 2017 and 18 was that they gradually stepped back more and more from local events, and they still do Shine and all that, which is great, but it's not. But
Yeah,
I
they
want
have
to
real
say, like,
responsibilities outside of this.
Yeah.
And if it's not making
Yeah.
money, I understand. Yeah.
yeah, it's just the thing where, like, I'm doing this out of passion. Like, this is what I want to do. So the timeline goes that so Big Blue Esports 2017 and 18, they were gradually pulling back from doing stuff. So the other big tournament series, the other two big tournament series in Mass in terms of weeklies, were Smashing Grounds, which I didn't really have an active role in, like, shaping how it was until, like, I want to say late 2016, late 2016. And that was a weekly mainly more focused on PM than Melee, but they had both. So it was definitely a thing where, at least as I saw it, Melee could use a competent organizer for it, because they were getting like 50-man tournaments, 60-man tournaments at the time. And the other one was the other, like, decently big tournament in Mass was Mamam, which obviously a lot of people, MMOM, yes.
Yep.
That one,
Classic.
Yeah, that one. If you look at the location of it, it's like this is like rural Massachusetts, like town out rural Mass. Like why should this succeed? But David Patty, who was the guy that hosted the first, like, God knows how many. He was determined to put this weekly out there for the people of the area, right? It was originally on Thursdays, but then Smashing Grounds came back, so they ended up moving Mamam to Wednesdays, and it became a staple of Melee in the area. I mean, for pretty much most of 2015, and then all of 16, 17, and December 2018 was when we announced that it was closing. And it was closing because attendance had dropped significantly over the course of the previous 2 years.
Okay, so just to circle back to the original topic, then, like,
yeah,
did you feel like you got into it because of passion alone? You've said that many times, but then do you feel like you also have this added responsibility that was thrust on you that you didn't ask for when you have to discipline these people?
Well, all right, so when it came to, when it came to, like, our first, like, super big controversial case or whatever, Big Blue Esports was still, it was still, like, a big authority at the time. So, originally I was just like, well, these guys are like still the biggest organizers in mass, and like they should be spearheading, these decisions. But they, but like I think, what did they say? They weren't keen on taking action on the community's behalf.
Yeah, we don't have to get
deal
into
with the case.
specifics because I honestly don't
So-
remember. It's been so long.
Yeah, in 2017, right? So,
I think in general, though, most COs
Yeah.
are hesitant just because we aren't authorities. We aren't legally
yeah,
responsible.
the community wanted action, though. That was the thing.
Yeah,
Like,
as
there was
long as there's
lot
a
of
majority that are calling for it, that's a different issue. When it's ambiguous, making that decision is like you're thrusting your opinion above others.
Yeah. Yeah, and 2017, 18, like I said, they were gradually stepping back from doing things locally in favor of, Shine and all that. And and we're happy that Shine exists and that, they brought Major to New England, right? But in terms of
Shine
the
was
local
great.
scene, yeah, it still is. I mean, I can't really say that I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to complain that we have a Major in our backyard and it isn't perfect.
Shine was probably the best run major I've been to, honestly. Like I have almost no complaints about Shine. I had to think about it.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that I would say that probably like 2017 day 2 was, yeah, I think that might have been the most.
I wasn't at that one.
I think that
Yeah.
that one was probably the one where we had the most like logistical difficulties. But overall, I would say 2016, and 2018, I could say pretty well that those were great. I can't complain about that at all. But to circle back to your question, I would say around 2018, I decided that, all right, the Boston Weekly, like Big Blue Esports, they weren't as keen on like doing these events locally, and I could tell. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just go and take action and try to get the Boston Weekly back to like some kind of sense of respectability and all this stuff. And it was working for a while. But with that came the responsibility that I was now the big organizer in Massachusetts, kind of by default.
Yeah, that's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, default, because like I said, so the people that were running Smashing Grounds, they were gradually pulling back from doing tournaments as much. Atlas was the guy who was running these events, but he was gradually getting less involved with the administration of them. Who else was it? Like I said, Big Blue Esports was running New Game Plus, Boston Weekly, but like I said, in the same time period, 2017-18, that was when, and oh wait, that's right, I forgot. In the first 8 months of 2017, Boston didn't have a big mainline weekly after like doing so well for like years before that, because we lost our venue, and the new venue that we were going to have didn't open up until August. So that was tough. That was very tough on the scene. And at the same time, Smashing Grounds, that tournament, they also lost their venue because Game Underground moved into another venue that had 9 p.m. close time because it was inside a mall. So
We've had a few like that. I think some of the most well-intentioned tournaments are always in the worst locations. They try to do their best.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tournament in like central, suburban Mass with a 9 p.m. close time. Like it was gonna suffer, so that sucked. And then my mom, in early 2018, I think it was March or so, the founder of it, Patty, he ended up leaving Massachusetts to take a job at Smash GG and all that. And for that weekly, I think there was like, God, how many people showed up for that? I think it was like 100. How many people were there? Yeah, there was 115 people there at Patty's last weekly to say goodbye. it was an emotional time.
When
for
was
sure.
that? What year or month? Sorry.
So March, yeah, let's see. All right, so this was March 2018, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, this was March 2018. The founder of my mom ends up going to Colorado to take a job at Smash GG and all that. And the tournament was left to Blue Eco, Nathan Cordero, who did his best with it, but he got burned out between that and his job at like Best Buy, I think it was at the time.
So now the
So like
question
that was
is, well, yeah,
yeah.
like for TO responsibility, are you going to be the one to spearhead the issue of when we start with COVID again, or like are people looking to you
Yeah.
to be the one to start that first tournament?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people have placed their trust in me. I mean, they generally they don't question, the amount that I put into it over the last couple of years. I don't think that that's been much of an issue, but I think in general there's some venues that might want to start things up earlier out of monetary interest rather than the community's interest, and that was something that I was worried about. Like when this whole thing set in, was that the venues and like the organizers are going to have like two different like sets of incentives.
Yeah, it depends who's running it. It's kind of hard to tell someone not to run their business and you don't have a right when you're a community member.
Yeah, but I guess I became like three different Massachusetts weeklies were doing well, and then either lost their venues or lost their TOs from 2017 to 18. So like maybe kind of by default, I was the guy that was left to pick up the pieces. And I mean,
And moving forward, you'll be the guy to keep putting
Yeah.
the pieces together. Whatever's
Yeah.
left of the community after COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about attendance. I mean, people tell me, especially early on after it's done, right? People have told me, how much they miss the tournaments and want them back.
See, they
and
say
like you want to
that. Everybody always
right?
says that, though. That's why I never trust like online people saying they're gonna go until they're actually pre-registering and show up. So I worry
Yeah.
that people will get complacent, especially with better net play and just that whole culture that's evolving. It's not going to replace it in person, but I don't know if it's going to be crazier than last time. It may just be the same.
So I made some tweets. About this, a little while ago, theorizing about like what could happen, right? Like what might we see after all this stuff is over? And I've had a long time to sit on it, but I think all right. So here are the tweets I had. To summarize them, what I think is likely to happen are the following. So first off, I think we can agree that net play has made the game a lot more accessible than it was before, right? Like Slippy has definitely done that.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Like what that means by extension is that people don't have to go to the tournaments to get the game anymore. Right?
Yeah, that's the main concern. As netplay gets better, people will sit home and there'll be more legitimacy for doing that instead of going in person.
Yeah, so it's just a thing where like people's incentives are I mean, I get it. If you have like a 9 to 5 or whatever, you don't and like you're working long weeks or what have you, then like I get that, it might encourage you to pass on going to a weekly and just like sit at home and do net play instead or whatever. Because like not everybody wants to go, straight from work to the tournament. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very easy to understand that. I don't blame them at all for that. But the effect of that is that weeklies were already suffering pre-COVID. Like that was something that was happening.
I think that's the main concern. There was a contraction. I think it partially because there was an overload, especially like 2016, maybe to 2018, there were way too many, and then it sort of started going back down to normal. but
Yeah.
hopefully we were getting to a steady state before COVID.
Oh, I have our attendance numbers actually for the last handful of years in Massachusetts for like weekly tournaments, and I figure I might as well
Yeah, read
might
off
I might
like
as well put.
what were some of the high points in the months right before shutdown, like January, February, March.
Well, yeah. So I put the document in the Discord that
Okay.
summarizes everything in numerical terms, and like you can very clearly see. I think 2016-15 was like the peak. Like that was when
Yeah, for sure.
weeklies in Massachusetts were doing fantastic. You know, and even 2017, before we ran into venue problems in a lot of places, it was doing great. But you can see, 2018, 19, 20 that things were not going as well.
Wow. I had no idea you had this much data on attendance. This is good.
Yes.
Illegal
I mean, it
games?
took a while
Wow.
to get all this
How do you
stuff.
track illegal games? What is this?
Illegal games, you know what that is.
Do I?
That PMP plus, of course.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about that.
I've normalized
But
it. I'm okay. Like,
yeah,
I was worried about Nintendo for a while, but if they're just gonna attack me anyway, I ran it at
yeah.
the first online, the second online. We'll do it at the third one. I think mods are just
But
becoming so common now. People expect it even.
oh yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Like you can pretty much see a very clear story. Oh, and just so you know, Grand Slam Smash, that tournament was in Tewksbury, so which is like just north of Boston. It's in the suburbs. That was another tournament that we had that unfortunately went by the wayside. But in general, you can see like pretty much what happened was that a lot of the tournaments in the more outlying areas were suffering. Pretty much.
Well, that
So
tends
like,
to happen,
yep,
yeah. If you're in
yeah,
that farther to reach area, it's always going to be. I guess that's kind of seasonal too. But I think
yeah,
if we look at the pillars or the most strong ones and look at their high points, we can get a better interpretation maybe.
yeah. I mean, Smashing Grounds is in like suburbs of Boston right now and has been since 2018. That one I'm not worried about. Finally has like a small but like dedicated following, so I'm not too worried about that. And then NGP is in Boston, so like if a weekly is gonna succeed anywhere, it would be there. But I have a timeline and all that stuff, and a bunch of different things have happened
Oh, we could have a
since I
whole
had
other
the
call
thing.
on just history, I think. I don't know if you've seen my
Yeah,
timeline I made for New Jersey. I have to update that
yeah,
one soon.
yeah. But I look over all this stuff, and it makes you appreciate just how good we had it when people had to go to the tournament to get the game, and when there was like a huge amount of passion behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very interesting in like a 100, 200 year, just like thinking ahead, what's going to happen as esports gets bigger and bigger and staying at home becomes more of a thing. Are you still going to get the feeling? Well, I guess this is what
Yeah,
sports games are going through now, where they have virtual guests and like video walls of fans and just trying to make people feel like they're there. If it still doesn't feel
yeah.
like we figured it out yet.
Well, I mean, now if you look at the melee numbers, right, for late 2019 and early 2020, like specifically, the thing that really, hit home at least to me was the fact that like larger monthlies or whatever, you know, uh, and like special events like Arcadians, obviously, my mom was gonna do great. Like you look at all of those and you realize appetite for tournaments, right? There's still appetite for competition. There was still appetite for all this stuff. I just think what happened was that people just got a lot more selective
Yeah, there was a
about
lot
the
of things
tournaments
going
that they
on.
went to.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I don't know about in your region as much, but New Jersey is one, we're the most densely populated state, and then also we had just so many small ones that there was never a reason to leave your immediate area at a certain
Yeah.
threshold. But I think once the total number goes down and you have to travel, then those central ones definitely grow in number. So it's a quantity thing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's just like that's another thing is that we had tournaments like fold up just by virtue of demand, right? Like you can't really do anything about that.
But
It's
that's what
sad
we're probably
because
going to see when COVID is over. I think we'll see a lot of small ones pop up that are just going to disappear because either they'll get caught up in the hype and think it's this. I don't really know what's going to go on. I'm not going to plan it, but that
yeah,
usually
so
happens.
yeah, so if you look in the tab that says 2018-19, so you can very clearly see like the direction was going from summer up through fall. Fall was an absolutely terrible time
But
for
fall
the
is always
tournament.
less too. It's harder to travel.
Yeah.
It's colder. People have school finals. There's always reasons.
Yeah.
I think summer is usually the peak of each year. I would say in every year I've seen it.
Yeah, for weeklies especially, right?
Oh
But
yeah, we're just talking weeklies,
yeah,
of course. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, if you look at the timeline, pretty much what happened around like before the weekly we had in the week of 12/17, that was when I announced the tournament was closing in 3 weeks. And
And it went
what
down.
happened? Yeah, and it went up actually because a lot of people were just like, "We're sad this is closing,
Wait,
but we
which one
want to
is? What
go."
color is it?
It's the black one in
Oh,
the
oops.
2018 column. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the week that we closed, like the final one, 96 entrants. That one definitely was a crazy one to run for sure. It was I remember it was Calvar and Toussaint grand finals, last hit, and Toussaint ended up winning, and Calvar was he was really sad after that one.
I would be sad too.
Because he was trying to defend the region and all that, and win the last one of those weeklies.
Also, the matchup
Because yeah,
doing
yeah.
that
I
well,
mean,
getting the last hit.
yeah. Marth Puff is definitely a grind for sure. It's not easy to do, but like people, yeah. What happened was is that people's like calculations as to whether or not the tournament was like worth it to go to just changed over the last 3 weeks. You know. And if you look at the Mass Madnesses that I was doing, in 2020 and the Arcadian that I did in late 2019, and my mom, for pretty much the big monthlies from like my mom onward in late 2019, you realize that like if you set the monthlies and like these bigger events up properly, if you structure it the way that you can, if you're good about outreach and all that stuff, you could still get a lot of people to show up to melee tournaments. Like,
Oh,
for sure.
thanks for the follow. Someone followed.
Nice.
Um, all right, so we've gone in a pretty good loop of all the main topics for TOing, and I guess life too at this point. I don't know, any
Yeah.
predictions about COVID or any thoughts on the whole situation to close this out?
Well, I think that's gonna get worse before it gets better, probably. But I
So you
think
think
when
it's that like this next period coming up is going to be the worst? Like you,
it could be. I mean, we've already had 400,000 people die from this. It's gonna hit 600. By the time it's over, at least that's what the people
I
around
would
Biden are
say at least
telling him.
600.
And I can't. You can't really quantify, what that means in a sentence. Like these are objectively very challenging times, for like obviously for the community, right? But also for,
Yeah, we could
like
just talk about
society in
humanity
general.
here. I think that's a bigger picture issue.
Yeah. It's just a thing where like, I'm going to like there's a lot of angry things I could say about, how people have handled this, right?
Yeah,
But
you're a few days too
I'm
late to vent over it, but if you want to talk a little bit about it, you can. I think we're
yeah,
all in the same boat with how poorly it was handled.
yeah. I mean, I think that I think it's objectively true that there's a lot of people that are alive today that would be if we had handled things differently. And I think that, like, and the biggest thing that, I hope that people, get out of this is, when normalcy comes back, that they're thankful for, all of these things. When, there's nothing. How should I describe it? Like, weeklies were a thing that we just got spoiled by, right? Like, tournaments are just here constantly. We just expect to have them, you know. And for the first time since, I started running stuff, we've had a world event, a pandemic, take all of that away from us. And I hope that people are appreciative of what it means to have these tournaments.
That's a nice sentiment. I think TOs will always be underappreciated, though. It's just how it is.
Yeah, I mean, we provide the tournaments, right? But people vote with their attendance whether or not they think it's worth it to go. That's how I see it.
I think that's a good thing. Here, let's end on like a controversial thing. What do you think about wobbling?
Okay. Well, I think about wobbling.
Yeah, do you ban it? I honestly, I allow it. I'm still down with it.
So what I do is I just simply follow what the most national tournaments are doing, which before COVID killed everything, that was they were banning at Pound, and they're banning elsewhere. So
you were just gonna.
I saw the.
Okay, yeah, going along with what people want, that's one thing. But like ethically, morally, deep down, philosophically, do you agree with banning wobbling?
I mean, I understand the arguments that it's not interactive, right? I understand the arguments that it's not interactive, that's bad for new players. I understand all those things. Like, am I super animated about it one way or another? Not really. I mean, I understand that. I understand that we take the game to be like as a community, we kind of take the game to be a test of skill, right? Like, that's how we take it. And and people are suggesting that, well, wobbling in some ways circumvents a lot of the things that you would normally have to do. You'd normally have to normally have to do a lot harder things to get a stock off of someone at 0% with every other character.
Okay, so you just think it's a fairness thing or a balance issue? Like, the devs should have balanced this, but they didn't. Well, so I feel like it's okay to artificially. Is that your stance?
It's. I mean, it's a question of is this? I mean, is something fair? Is it healthy for the game? All these other things, right? And I think you could argue that it's not healthy for the game. I think that those arguments definitely have merit. I think it's easy to
until we see tons and tons of ICs wobbling everyone to death, it got to the point where it was starting to get pretty prevalent, but it never got to the point where there were so many ICs that I thought that was a fear for the community,
Yeah, I mean, we're talking top level, right? I mean, I came from a land where
there were plenty of ICs at lower levels. We should be distinct about that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking top 100, there were definitely more ICs, a few years ago. A lot more, and I feel like probably more floaties in general than you see at the top level now. Just because the composition of the game was different back then, and a lot of the people behind those characters ended up quitting or
the meta has
doing
changed.
Whatever.
And also now everyone just plays online spaces all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a thing where spaces are very, very much the lifeblood of the game in a lot of respects. The fact that, at least to me, the fact that Fox is the best character is an objectively great thing for the game. Because here's a character that you can play pretty aggressively. You can really do some impressive things with him, but it takes a good amount of skill, and it takes and it definitely takes prediction.
But does that mean everyone should have to require skill? That's the real argument with wobbling.
Require skill? What do you mean by that?
Just because Fox sets a really high bar for how good you can be in the game, does that mean every character has to meet some minimum threshold of skill? I think that's one argument against the ICs, the skill-based argument.
No. What I'm saying is, irrespective of that, I'm not commenting on that relative
Oh,
to
okay.
the Ice Climbers thing. What I'm saying is that objectively, the fact that Fox is the best, the fact that he can like push the pace and that he can be aggressive, that he can combo and kill really efficiently and all this other stuff. I think it's an objectively great thing for the game, as opposed to like if say let's say that all the fast followers were significantly worse and like young Link was the best character. That would be objectively terrible for the game. I think that
It would
that's
be a
fair to
very
say.
different game. Yeah, I could see what you mean there.
Yeah,
Better Fox
yeah,
than someone else.
because like you need like yeah, because you need somebody to be able to push the pace and somebody to be able to like encourage more aggressive play, encourage stocks to be taken more quickly. Instead of like these Floyd versus Floyd matchups that like I remember we had a set my mom. I think it was in 2018 or whatever, where I'm pretty sure it was like a 38-minute set.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of New Jersey sets. Wait,
Yeah, Peach Puff.
let me ask you
It's 5.
then. Also, what is your stance on freezing Randall?
Freezing Randall. I mean,
I'm against that. I see no reason to
Yeah.
freeze Randall.
that's probably not that's probably not realistic. I think like
People are arguing.
I think
for that.
Justin.
I see why
Yeah,
they
there
argue
is-
for it. I just don't think it should happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think here's the thing. If we're getting into freezing stages, then like, you just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just freeze all these stages. Well,
freezing stadium is one thing. I think that's.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, would you freeze FOD? Do you think that randomness is important for the stage?
Well, I mean, some people might argue that it might be better for certain characters, but I don't know. It's weird at Smashing Grounds, but when there were rules being discussed for PM back then, one of the arguments for FOD was that objectively it was better for certain characters.
Well, I think every decision has that as a consequence. You're implicitly buffing and nerfing characters. I think it's more you have to approach it like in a neutral philosophical stance and just let it play its course out.
Yeah, I mean, the FOD platforms, like, they're not great, but they're not the worst thing ever. I think there are definitely arguments for freezing things that like have merit or whatever, but I just don't. Here's the thing: the way I see my tournaments is that my tournaments should be preparing people for like what you see at major, right?
Okay.
I think that you should be preparing your players for what they're going to see, at the biggest events, which I think, and I haven't seen a good counter argument to this, is that the majors are like the bedrock of the community. Like these are the centerpieces of our scene. They're the biggest events with the most players coming from all over, and they're the events that we put the most weight and significance on, right?
So therefore, you feel obligated to just go with what they say.
I think that you should try to simulate that experience.
I break a little bit here because I do run tournaments for myself mainly, and I feel like there is some sort of, I don't want to call myself a purist, but there's some things that I still allow, and I feel like it's a fun touch to have that in a tournament. Like, if I was running a weekly or something that was highly competitive, then I would want to adhere to something, especially if you sign on to the Smash League, if that ever happens. But like, Congo Jungle 64 in doubles, that's something I usually allow, although people never use it. I feel like that is not something that affects fairness. That's something that should be allowed. And the arguments against it are usually just about uniformity. So I try to give some options.
I would just say that stage is...
In doubles, it's okay. Only doubles, though.
Yeah, I think... I mean, even there, it's just...
There's a whole mechanic of going through the stage that Melee just never plays with because no stage has that. Or also, like, command grabs. There's no viable character with command grabs, except, I guess, Yoshi. So people just don't experience that. And then you go to other games and you get this whole other sense of how you can play with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking about this as like a thing that we're doing for fun or whatever, then great. But
it's a mix between fun and I guess, yeah. The question is, do you go for a competitive standard or do you go for like a community? This is how it should have been played. Player or
Yeah.
there's arguments against both of them.
Yeah, it's like what you think is right. I mean, having like a national standard for everything is, I think that it's healthy, and I think that's something that others should try to emulate generally. But what people want to do with their own rules, they want to do. I'm not going to be super duper animated about like people dissenting about this or that.
Yeah, and
And
it
at the
changes
end
over
of
time a lot. People forget that.
oh, yeah. I mean, here's the thing: is that the rules haven't changed, or they barely changed since I got in the scene.
I think, well, that's why this is such a question now, because modding is a thing and controllers. I guess it really started with controllers and the box argument, and then from there it evolved to everything else. So we'll see what happens.
UCF, right?
Yep, UCF. That's something where I was like against it from a purist perspective, and then over time, I guess it wasn't that much time. I really quickly realized like that's not a good argument against it. There's a lot of reasons to have it if you can actually enforce it. So
I mean, we're talking. Yeah, I mean, it's literally a controller lottery. That's even worse if you don't have it. So, it's just a thing where it's like the good it will do is worth it for sure. At least as I see it. But yeah, it's gonna be a long time before these discussions, at least for me, go anywhere in terms of affecting in-person events and the like. I'm not hopeful for the summer. I'm not.
Even if it's going to be this summer, I don't want to be the one running it. I'll maybe show up and say hi to people, but that's on them.
I mean, like I put this in a TO group chat earlier where like PAX East was planning to do like early June or whatever for their event, and I'm just sitting here just like, what planet are these people on? Like there is no way that this is gonna happen.
I think it's one of those things where you just have to announce it and cancel last minute. Like you have to start building hype to even have a hope of it succeeding. So maybe it's a bit empty.
Yeah, and Massachusetts is definitely one of the more, definitely gonna be one of the more strict states in terms of like when.
Oh, did you cut out? I think Tom cut out. Yeah, there he goes. Is he back, Tom?
Yeah.
Hey, there he is.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, rules are a thing. Rules are a thing, and conventions are a thing, and all that, or will be a thing. But how soon all this stuff will come back, I couldn't say with any authoritative reason. I just hope that it's all back this year, and ideally by September or something like that. I just think that people need to wise up, get vaccinated, and
wear a mask,
and just wear a damn mask. Like it's not. This shouldn't have ever been a political issue or like complicated to anybody,
I don't
and
know,
like
man.
anybody.
I talked to so many conservative smashers. I can't stand it. Like, I have no problem with conservatives, but there's a certain brand of like misinformation around masks that people believe, and it's kind of astounding, especially people younger than us that I don't even know how they believe it.
So, I mean, here's the thing: is like if you're ignoring science, then like I don't know
exactly,
what the hell you're doing. Like, like yes, I know better than the scientists. Like, what the hell is this?
There's one case where they showed me like, oh, the WHO got rid of their mask mandate, and then they send me the article, and it's like the WHO says only wear a mask if you're within 6 feet of people who are infected. So it's like even then they don't say what you're saying. I don't know how you believe this.
Yeah, it's just like people here's the thing. When things become political, then what happens is that people get very prideful about like defending their position, right? They get very prideful about defending their positions, and they take you, questioning what they're saying like personally. Like like
Yeah.
you're questioning their intelligence or something like.
It's ego
And
and it's ideology.
yeah,
You don't want your
yeah,
belief system to get shaken. So there's a very careful
yeah,
way of trying to get these people to. Well, it's the same for anyone. You have to convince people by making them think they're the ones who figured it out on their own. You can't attack them ever.
yeah. I think just in general that like if you're somebody who's absolutely convinced that you have the answers to everything and that you can't be wrong, I think that that's a very sad way to live.
Yeah.
I think that just in general, there's a lot of people that are like that, which is really unfortunate. But the best that I would ask of somebody is simply to just be open to receiving new things and listen to science and do all this stuff. You know,
Yeah, it's more about openness. I think it's also thought pattern because when you talk to these people, I don't know what it is about gaming that has such a big density of these people, but like being open is like any article I see could be real, any information I see could be real, or any study I read could be false. So it's like I'm open to the things I want and more skeptical about the things I don't want. You need to have a thought pattern that lets you filter out what's bad and like evaluate what you could weigh. I think that's the main
yeah,
thing. You weigh information appropriately, not just take random things on the internet and weigh them the same way as experts.
yeah, cherry picking information to like advance, whatever you think your own interest is or whatever, or to be like, well, masks are like a, anti-freedom, kind of thing. Like, dude, like
That's a
screw
whole
off with
political
this shit.
argument then, yeah. Like, yeah, you'd sacrifice your freedoms all the time for the better good of society. Well, why is this such a big deal? If you don't want to wear a mask, don't go to that business. Like,
Yeah, it's like what, and it's also a thing too where like now there's like controversy coming up over whether businesses can require people to get vaccinated and stuff like that. So that's really cool.
it is an interesting discussion, but when people's priorities are so skewed that they're like willing to defend stuff to the death, then you know like there's something else going on here. It's not a
Yeah.
practicality that's motivating them. It's like ideology or just like a theoretical position they want to defend to the death.
Yeah. And I don't want to like demonize like conservatives here or
Oh, of
anything
course
like that.
not.
Like
It's
that's
not
not
conservatives. It's
that's
Trump
not what I'm.
supporters. It's a certain type of person who is honestly they're. It's not their fault either. There's a level of brainwashing and like indoctrination involved here, and misinformation that social media is 100% responsible for. So it's all of
Yeah.
society that has to bear this and try to fix it.
Yeah, I think in general the best thing that like I said, the best thing that somebody can do is be open to new information and just understand and like be able to like accept new information and have it like change viewpoints to a certain degree. That said though, like playing games with like what the truth is,
It's
like
so hard,
disregarding
dude.
science, all that stuff is like no. Like I don't approve of that at all.
I may talk to more
I
people like
yeah.
that because it's very. I mean, at a certain level, you can't argue with them, but at another level, you can like try to figure out what reality is and find out where the disagreements are.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think just in general, the big thing that you have to do if you're talking to these people is like not come at them from like I know better than you like way of putting it because there's a lot of people that'll take offense to that the second that they get any
Yeah.
inkling of that. But more it's just like an educational like this is how it works
Well, that's
scientifically
I think that's the
regardless
problem.
of
It's condescending to be like, I'm going to educate you. You have to talk people through it really and tell a story. Like, do you believe this? Well, does that not apply here? Like, try to point out a contradiction. Because, like,
yeah
in the end, we probably all believe the same things. Like, well, that's not true. We all want the same goals of society getting better for everyone and, like, general happiness going up. So it's just a matter of finding the ways to agree on doing it.
yeah I mean the point of life is to be happy at least partially or so I'd like to believe but I think that society is not the happiest it's ever been right now. I think that that's
Yeah,
not a particularly
it's hard.
controversial take at
It's really
this
hard to
point in
say.
time. But I don't know. I think the games are fun. I think that tournaments are a great place for people to meet their friends, prove themselves and do all this other stuff, and to play this amazing game. And honestly, I tip my cap to anybody that is helping to advance the cause of these for their local scene, because they're doing a good thing.
Yeah, shout out to all the TOs that will never get thanked, never get any respect, always get shit on. It's just a fact of life, and you kind of just live. Dude, to this day, people make like shout out to whoever on their birthday post in New Jersey, SSBM. I don't think I get those like any year. People just forget I exist still. It's so funny. I don't even mind. It's just like we're such backgrounds people that it's just kind of expected at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's like at that point you have to ask yourself why you're doing this. The big thing I tell people that are interested in it is that this is something you have to want to do.
Yeah, I don't make money off this. It's a lot of time and effort, but it's fun enough to just like organize people. The charity angle's nice too. The tournament, like getting to meet people in person. I'd have to think back. I think my first tournaments were when I was like a kid with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and HeroClix, so I have to look back for my motivation there.
Yeah, I mean, we all have to grow up at some point, right?
Yeah, I mean, also, if tournaments are only like one every few months, I can do that. It's not taking over my life. I'm definitely not going back to doing locals anytime soon. I put in my time for that.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I used to do multiple weeklies and all that stuff, and while these other organizers were leaving, and it was tough for sure, but over time, I gradually pulled back from doing a lot of this stuff. Like Shine 2018, after I left that tournament, that was probably the most tired I'd been and the most burned out I had been from tournaments, like for sure, like no question about it. And at that point, I was just like, all right, I've got to scale back. I've got to scale back what I'm doing here, and and like double down on like the things that I'm trying to do, right?
Yeah,
and
you're at a certain level, your expertise is more valuable at a bigger, like stable event. You don't need to be the one in the trenches running weeklies all the time. That's more how you get the experience to move on and do other things, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I do 1 weekly on Thursdays, Smashing Grounds, and I do a monthly. I do a monthly for New Hampshire, which is smaller, and I do a monthly for Massachusetts, Mass Madness, which is obviously a lot bigger. I've had a couple people come from out of region for the Mass Madnesses, and they were going great before COVID. I finally figured out how to set up a monthly properly after all this time, and then COVID goes and just cans everything. And it's just like I finally acquired all of this this knowledge of how to do it, how to set up these tournaments, all this stuff, and then I can't use it anymore for like a year and a half or 2 years or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
That's a frustrating. Yeah, that's a frustrating part. Is that like if you know that with this knowledge you can do a lot of good, like you're excited to use it, right?
Well, hey, if you want to help out at the next online charity event I'm running, you could help do some online TOing. I'll invite you. I think Shine is kind of sponsoring us. It's basically just running an online bracket that one day, though. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I think that
it's okay.
When in-person tournaments come back, I'll be back on that. But when that is, I have no idea. And I wish I had an idea, because it would be good to like have the peace of mind to be like, yes, this is actually coming back after all this time, when it like a big thing I realized is that tournaments in general, I couldn't find anything to like fully replace all of the things that the tournaments brought me. I just couldn't.
Oh, that's a nice point to leave off on, I guess. So you want them to come back, you're looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll see you when that happens.
Yeah, I think New England will see a little bit of me. I think it'll happen. But I thank you for having this discussion and all that.
Yeah,
I think it might have been productive.
Yeah, it was just good to talk to someone. We're all isolated. Hopefully we could do this again in a month or two, see how things are. We'll see who else I invite onto this. I don't know what this is going to turn into, but it's good to talk to
you. It's like a podcast or something. I don't know, but
I mess around on games and talk to people. I mean, you're the only Smash person so far. The last guy was a coder. I'm interviewing. I don't know if I should say until they confirm yet, but the people who work on just very random things at this point. So
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
we'll always have the voice of
I
Melee in there, though.
oh yeah. I mean, at this point, it's just like for a lot of us, whenever we leave the game, there's still always going to be a part of us that will identify as a melee player.
Oh
Part.
yeah, I don't care how bad I am. I'm still gonna play it. It's so fun. There's just
Yeah.
something about it. I play a bunch of other platform fighters now because of it too. I really appreciate like Slap City's movement, Rivals movement, and you go back to Melee, and it also just it gives you a new appreciation every time you go back to it. But okay,
Yeah, it's a perfect accident, right?
yeah,
Or
it is really
or was it an accident?
it is the perfect blend of like well, it's really an accident of how people played it. It was never intended to be played that way, I think. So we discovered it in a way.
Yeah.
But how
Shout
can
outs to
we
us, huh?
Yeah, how can we promote you? Here's your Twitter, Gtown Tom. Anything else you're working
Yeah.
on? Fun projects you want to talk about?
Not particularly right now. It just my Twitter's fine. I think like I think just in general, I'll be doing a lot more when events come back. But if people want to reach out to me and talk to me about stuff, and I don't know, maybe to schedule tournaments even. Well, wild concept, I know, right?
Yeah.
Even if they want to do that, I'm always down to discuss these things with people because I think quarantine's been rough on a lot of us for sure. No question about it.
Yeah, just
And
talking about things feels good again. Like pretending like we're running tournaments, getting ready.
yeah, just like, oh well, I had to, that guy threw his controller, so that's unfortunate. But
Uh,
oh man, there was some funny shit that I remember for sure.
all right.
Lots of memories.
It was good talking to you, Tom. I'll reach out to you again soon. Have a good
Of
weekend.
course. Yeah. Till next time,
Till next
whenever
time.
next time is.
Peace. All right. Thank you, Tom. Gtown Tommy. Always a pleasure. And I guess I'll cut the stream. Thank you to the 2 viewers.